We're in the Memorial Union Building on the Iowa State University campus in Ames, the site of the Republican straw poll. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann finished first place yesterday with 29% of the vote. Texas Representative Ron Paul came in a close second. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty dropped out of the race today after finishing a distant third with 14% of the vote. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum and businessman R-Minn rounded out the top 5 finishers. Congresswoman Bachmann is here with us this morning. Congratulations.
Thank you, Nora. Great to be with you.
Let me ask you about the breaking news this morning, and that is that one of your fellow challengers, a fellow Minnesotan, Governor Tim Pawlenty, has dropped out of the race. Why do you think he lost?
Well, I have great respect for the governor. I've known him for a long time, and I thought he brought a very important voice to the race, and I'm grateful for the competition that we had. And I think that the results that came in yesterday were ones that indicated that the field was going to thin.
Will you ask for his endorsement?
I look forward to talking to him. Hopefully I'll be calling him very soon.
Let me show you some of the headlines of the newspapers this morning because they note your victory, but you also share the headlines with the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, who has thrown his hat into this crowded ring. How will you compete against him?
Well, I think what I'll be bringing to this race quite clearly is how I've been a champion and a voice for people in Washington, D.C. I've been at the tip of the spear. The last 2 months, for instance, I've been leading on this issue of not raising the debt ceiling. People want us to get our house in order financially. It's not happening. They want someone who's going to stand up and do what they say and say what they mean, and that's what I've been doing in Washington. They really sent a signal yesterday and a strong message to Washington that they want someone who's going to fight for them.
I know you've talked about that, leading that fight, being at the tip of the spear. How do you respond to then that many Republicans, half of the Republicans ended up voting to raise the debt ceiling? Half of the Tea Party caucus voted to raise the debt ceiling. How did you provide leadership if they disagree with you?
Well, I brought that voice into Washington, and I think that what we saw is that, unfortunately, I think we should have listened to the voice of the people.
Not Republicans.
Well, the good fortune that I've been having is traveling all across Iowa. I'll be going up to Waterloo, where I was born, later today, just to thank Iowans for this vote. But I've been traveling all across Iowa. I will tell you, Nora, there hasn't been one time where someone has said to me, Michele, I want my taxes increased, and I want to make sure that government can keep spending more money that we don't have. That's never happened. And so I took that voice back to Washington, and we gained a lot of traction. We had a big debate, and it was important that we had that debate.
The debt and the deficit are a big deal, but even more important to voters is jobs.
Yes,
and
without
the economy.
a doubt, number one.
You're going to Waterloo. You're going to share the stage there with Governor Rick Perry. Almost half of the jobs created in America in the last 2 years were created in Texas. How do you feel like you have helped create jobs? What's your record on jobs?
Well, I am a job creator. I'm a former federal tax attorney, and I have a postdoctorate degree in tax law. I spent years in the United States Federal Tax Court. I've seen
was that creating jobs?
Sure, because I understand how high taxes destroy jobs. And then my husband and I also started our own successful company. We've created jobs, and as a job creator myself, I understand how difficult it is to actually make a profit in a business. I think that's a good thing, to make a profit. We need more profitable businesses. And so what I've been doing in Washington very successfully, I think, is bringing that voice to why we need to get rid of Obamacare, the Dodd-Frank bill. I'm the chief author of both of those repeal bills. We need to repeal these because I will tell you, from Cement Tech to Competitive Edge, companies I've been to here in Iowa, they tell me that those bills are leading them to not be able to create jobs.
Other than repealing Obamacare, are there other ways that you would try and help create jobs in the short term?
Oh, sure. Well, what we need to do, quite frankly, is repeal the tax code in its current form. It's 3.8 million words. We need a tax code that is job-friendly. This is not a job-friendly tax code. When you have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world at 34%, that's not going to incentivize people to start new businesses. We need to make sure that we lower our tax rate, and there's a number of things in the tax code that I would change, and that would help job creation.
You have spent 5 years in the United States Congress. What can you point to as a record of accomplishment there?
Well, for the bulk of my time, Speaker Pelosi has been the Speaker of the House. She has not embraced my pro-growth agenda, but that hasn't deterred me. I've continued to give a voice and bring message to why the policies that President Obama has put into place have been so detrimental. That's the voice that people now want to see go into the White House. The message that we sent yesterday is the one people want in the White House because they want job creation.
How do you get something done in terms of for people that are hurting in America in terms of the jobs picture, even in a divided government? Could you only govern well as president if you had a Republican Congress?
Well, President Obama had an all-Democrat Congress, and look what we got. This last week, we got a punch to the gut in the United States like we've never seen before. We've never lost our AAA credit rating before. We have absolutely anemic growth, and the job creation numbers are terrible. This isn't what we want, and that's why everywhere I go across the United States, Democrats, independents, apolitical people say to me, Michele, I'm voting for you because I want a new voice. I want something fresh in Washington.
The S&P, there was a downgrade, of course, that led to a lot of the market turmoil that we've had. And they specifically cited the brinkmanship in Washington that has led to a less stable, less effective government. Do you feel partly responsible for that brinkmanship?
I offered a plan, which is very different from President Obama, who offered no plan. My plan was to tell the markets, there is no problem with default. We will not default, and we'll prioritize our spending. President Obama knew in January that we were in trouble, but he presented a budget that had $1.5 trillion in failure. So he, in essence, his policies planned for this failure that we're in.
But that horse is left at the barn. We've already raised the debt ceiling. What would you do now in terms of the state of the economy?
The horse left the barn against the better judgment of the American people. That's what I brought to bear, the better judgment of the American people. What I would do now is I would call all of Congress back into Washington, and I would say this: we will get that AAA credit rating back, and this is what we'll do. We'll announce to the markets that in no case will we default. We'll pay our men and women in the military. We'll make sure all senior citizens that are currently on entitlements get their checks, but we know the entitlements are destroying the country, the system as it's in its current form. So we're going to reform it and modernize it, because my mom is 80 years old. My stepdad's 87. I love senior citizens. The last thing I want is to see one go out to the mailbox and get an IOU when they're depending on that check. So we have to reform that system.
Congresswoman, let me turn to something you said in 2006. I want to play the audio so our viewers can hear this as well. Let's listen.
My husband said, now you need to go and get a postdoctorate degree in tax law. Tax law? I hate taxes. Why should I go and do something like that? But the Lord says, be submissive. Wives, you are be submissive to your husbands.
Congressman, what do you mean wives should be submissive to their husbands?
Well, there was a debate earlier this week, and that question was asked in the debate. And for my husband and I, submission means respect, mutual respect. I respect my husband. He respects me. We've been married 33 years. We have a great marriage. We built a business together. We've had 5 children together. We've raised 23 foster children together in our home. And respecting each other, listening to each other is what that means.
Would you use a different word today other than submissive?
You know, I guess it depends on what word people are used to, but respect is really what it means.
Do you think submissive means subservient?
Not to us. To us, it means respect. We respect each other, we listen to each other, we love each other, and that's what it means.
And then finally, you are headed on to Waterloo today. What's next? How do you compete for the Republican nomination?
Well, as we are now, we're going person to person, state by state. I've been taking my message all across Iowa, and people resonate with that message. We'll be in South Carolina this week and then on to New Hampshire. And so we'll be going person to person, voter to voter, state by state to take my pro-growth, pro-jobs message. And as President of the United States, I will repeal Obamacare, and I will not rest until we do.
And do you feel like your campaign has received fair coverage? I want to point specifically to the cover of Newsweek magazine. And your friend, Sarah Palin, was here in Iowa this week, and she said that she thought that the headline was worse than the picture. The headline reads, Queen of Rage. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, this last week I was focused on what was happening in the country. I was trying to prevent President Obama from getting that $2.4 trillion check.
I know, and you won, so what about the cover?
Well, quite honestly, when you lose your AAA credit rating and when you lose 30 Americans in Afghanistan, a magazine cover is really the least of your problems. So it really didn't make any impact on me. I was more focused on the country and how we're going to create jobs and turn the economy around.
Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, congratulations on your victory.
Thanks,
Thank you
Norah.
for being here. We
We'll
appreciate
talk to you
it.
again.